I tried beating Terraria Skyblock, but every enemy we defeat drops completely random loot, meaning that a slime can drop anything from some random garbage door all the way up to the best weapon in the game. Will I be lucky enough to obtain all of the proper items to summon in and defeat Moonlord? Well, let's find out. I started off by spawning in on an island with absolutely nothing except for a tree, some water, and my copper tools. I went straight into chopping down the tree, crafting all the wood into platforms, and making a long platform so we can get slimes to spawn in. Our main tactic here is going to be getting slimes to spawn in and defeating them in order to get ourselves loot. As soon as slimes started spawning in, I started killing them. I used all of the blocks they dropped to make my platforms even longer. The first weapon I managed to get was a sapphire staff, which provided some damage, but it was still very garbage. And then upon killing a slime, I actually managed to get a zenith on one of the very first drops. This was extremely unexpected, and it's definitely going to make the playthrough far easier. Anyways, I expanded my platforms, put myself down a workbench, I placed down all of the banners under the dirt, and then started making myself a tiny little storage by building platforms above the spawn and placing down a chest. Once it turned nighttime, I farmed out some mobs, essentially just try to get better loot for now. I got myself a moonlord treasure bag, got myself a ton of other random items that I just stacked into the chest, and then upon farming once more, I got myself some better armor. I expanded my sky base even more. I got myself a chainsaw, a brand new cool bow, and also the Stardust Dragon Staff. For essentially the next couple of nights, I just went AFK and used the Stardust Dragon Staff to get myself as much loot as possible. And upon coming back, I saw that we got the Daybreak, which is a phenomenal weapon. But come on guys, like, we have the Zenith. I don't really think the Daybreak is that necessary anymore. Anyways, I picked up all of the loot, and upon seeing that I had a summon for the Queen Bee in my inventory, I spawned in the Queen Bee and defeated it, making it the very first boss we took out. Once it turned to nighttime, I spawned in and took out the Eye of Cthulhu, and then since mob spawn rates were extremely low, I decided to just summon in the Pumpkin Moon so we were guaranteed to get decent loot. Using the Zenith, I tried to take out the Pumpkin Moon, and this was tragic. We died countless times, and once the pumpkins actually started to attack, I got absolutely obliterated and just had to wait for it to go away. My next goal after this was to build myself a bunch of NPC houses so we can get the builder man to move in. I honestly forget what his name is, but using him we could buy wood and then expand our platforms even more. Once nighttime came around, I summoned in a bunch of skeletrons and took them out in hopes of getting better loot, but we still managed to get absolutely nothing. I ended up browsing the NPC shops, sold all of my items to them just because we had too many items in our inventory that we frankly did not need. And then after this, I just waited for more trees to grow, organized more chests, and once I had enough wood, I started building more NPC houses. Since I ran out of wood, I just decided to use any other material I could find in my chest, giving us these very weird looking homes. Just like, check this out on screen, it's an absolute abomination. I don't even know if this is considered a house. I don't know how the NPCs consider this suitable, but if it works for them, it sure as well works for me. Upon nighttime, I farmed out more mobs, got myself a ton of boss summons, and just a ton of random items overall that I had to organize into chests. And this is where I got the brilliant idea to use all of the blocks from the presents in order to complete the rest of my homes. So I got myself a bunch of candy cane blocks and built a ton of NPC houses. When trees don't grow, you just have to resort to your next best option. Sadly, this doesn't work in real life. Once the NPC houses were built, I made myself a massive rope to the underworld and then tried to build a tiny house there so I can push and shove the guide into the lava and summon in the wall of flesh. I made a tiny home for the guide, but instead of dying to the lava, he decided to fall through the world and disappear. But this wasn't a problem, so we got him back, and on a very peaceful night as he was sitting, I broke the floor under him and made him burn to death. This caused the wall of flesh to spawn in, and here ensues the most laggiest boss fight of all time. Anyways though, we took out the wall of flesh, which puts us into hard mode. Since there's no demon altars and essentially no other way of making progress, we just have to rely on the random drops to provide us with all the boss summons. The first thing I did was summon in a bunch of Skeletron Primes using a summon that I previously had gotten, and unsurprisingly, since we were on expert mode and Boio is not that good at the game, I ended up getting absolutely obliterated. But this was alright because I refought Skeletron once more, and we actually took him out this time. Then right after this, I summoned in and defeated the Destroyer, leaving us with the twins. Before this, I built myself a massive artificial jungle using using a bunch of mud blocks and some jungle grass seeds, and upon nightfall once more, I took out the Eye of Cthulhu again, and then later summoned in and defeated the twins. The jungle now grows restless. You know what else grows restless, boyos? That is right. Plantera in your backyard when she sees that you haven't subscribed to Boio. So subscribe to the channel or the salad boss will come and find you. Now see, there was a slight problem. There was no jungle yet to grow restless in the first place, so I completely finished building the jungle by this point and then waited and waited for Plantera to spawn in. While waiting, I decided to build myself an artificial above ground dungeon so the lunatic cultists can spawn in later once we defeat all the pillars. And after this was done, I went to duplicate dirt using dirt bombs so we can get a bigger platform for more trees to spawn in. During this time, since I wanted to check off more bosses off the boss checklist, I summoned in the Frost Moon. This is probably the worst idea I had thus far and we got absolutely demolished. After this, I had a summon for 10 Eaters of Worlds, so I spawned them all in and fought them. Of course, we defeated them easily using the Zenith, but this was very interesting as it turned the background into the corruption and I genuinely had thought I had corrupted my entire world. After defeating that, I summoned in and defeated the Crimson Mimic and then spawned in 10 destroyers, which caused me to die. But after fighting a bunch of mechanical bosses, we did manage to actually find ourselves a Plantera bulb. Now boyos, let me tell you, this boss fight was tough. As soon as I came up to the bulb, I was very anxious. Keep in mind, I only had 5 hearts of health and this was all on expert mode. Even though I had the Zenith, I did not have a proper set of armor, I didn't have proper buffs, so I just decided to dive head first into it, break the bulb, and give it my all. This boss fight was very hectic, and I almost got one-shotted by every single one of her projectiles, but we did manage to deal a bunch of damage to her, and as soon as we took her out, she killed us at the same time, making this extremely clutch. After this, we could now legally summon in Golem, so I grabbed a lizard power cell, built myself a bigger arena where the spawn point of Golem was, and I summoned him in. Once again, this was extremely clutch, but we did manage to take him out because we had the Zenith, of course, and without this weapon, I probably would have got absolutely massacred. After this, we were able to take out the lunatic cultist, but in the artificial dungeon that I managed to build, he did not spawn in. So instead of this, I did have a summon for it, but it summoned in 10 lunatic cultists instead of just 1. Now boyos, give it your best guess. Did I come out alive out of this? Did Boio come out of this alive? If you guessed no, then you would be right. I got absolutely demolished. 10 lunatic cultists is not the way to go. Anyways, after this, I did manage to find myself a summon for 1 lunatic cultist, so I spawned him in, and we took him out, prompting the celestial pillars to spawn. In order for all the celestial creature mobs to spawn in, I had to build platforms across the entire world, so using a bridge builder from Fargo Souls mod, I made an insta bridge that spanned the entire world, and then went to go take out the pillars. But before this, I did go and fight Empress of Light during the daytime, which caused me to die, but that was all for fun, so it doesn't even matter. Okay, we went over to take out the Stardust pillar first, and after taking that out, we ventured over to take out the Solar pillar next. After the Solar pillar came the Nebula pillar, and lastly, we took out the Vortex pillar. And after this, our screen started shaking, and boyos, I was not ready for this whatsoever. Even though we had the Zenith, we had almost full beetle armor, all of the buffs in the game. As soon as Moonlord spawned in, we got demolished almost immediately. We only had 100 HP, and that 100 HP would get wiped away in one shot for Moonlord. So I had to re-strategize here. I tried to fight him over and over again. I used the STMG, I used the Zenith, I used every single weapon you can imagine, and we could not take him out. There were so many attempts where I would get super close to beating him. I learned all of his attack patterns, and I actually managed to almost kill him up until where I only had his core left. But I managed to die when he only had the slightest bit of HP left. I was about to give up here, but I went for one final push. We took out both of his eyes, took out his main eyeball next, then with his core left, we took out the core and finally defeated Moonlord on a randomized skyblock world. After this, I used the sigil to summon in every single boss in the game, and of course we got demolished, but regardless, it was very fun to do. Be sure to check out another video like this on screen, consider subscribing to the channel if you're new, drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. This has been Boio, peace out.